In at number 10, Spectre. Let's start off our list with this DC character, Spectre. Spectre first appeared in More Fun Comics issue 52 back in the Golden Age in 1940, and even was a member of the first ever superhero team, the Justice Society of America, in All-Star Comics. He's crazy strong, said to have the abilities of a god, which includes the capability to manipulate time, space, and matter. He's invulnerable as well to physical damage, but for all the good he can do, he's severely limited by several factors. For starters, he needs a human host. He's pretty vulnerable to magic. The voice, the source of his abilities, can put limitations on what he's able to do, like the whole only binding to human host thing. There's divine law that he must follow, punishable by the voice, who is also known as the Presence, an entity that's essentially a form of god. So, all in all, he's got quite a few limitations. For all that power, it's kind of rough. In at number 9, Zeitgeist. Zeitgeist, aka Alex Clooney, was a mutant who did not last long. He first appeared in X-Force issue 116 in 2001 and died that same issue. He was the team leader of the X-Force iteration that was created as a celebrity superhero team. You can see why that took such a terrible turn. Plus, he was kind of a dick. It was later revealed that he was actually in on the plot that eventually killed him, the massacre of a boy band called Boys R Us gone wrong. So what are Alex's superpowers? Well, he has acidic vomit. Yup, meaning he can only attack others when having a tactile chunder. His suit was also specially designed so that it wouldn't cause him harm, with him wearing a protective mouthpiece. While he was quick to bite the dust for other reasons, being able to only attack others with your vomit ooze isn't overly ideal as a power, now is it? He also got dead in a pretty brutal way, so there's that. Up next, number 8, Shazam. There's no doubt that Shazam has a ridiculous amount of power. Dude has rivaled Superman before. He's got a lot to offer. But there is one fun little restriction that keeps him at bay. The fact that in order to summon all of his powers, he needs to say the word Shazam. Otherwise, he's just Billy Batson, a regular old boy. This can sometimes prove to have dire consequences, as seen in the Forever Evil story event back in 2013 and onwards. Alexander Luthor on Earth 3 was the Shazam of that Earth, known as Mazaz. An alternate Earth Lex Luthor was able to use his voice, which matched up with Alexander's, to cause him to transform out of his Shazam-esque state, leaving him incredibly vulnerable. And at number 7, Zatanna. Zatanna is a case of a superhero held back by her own devices. Now, her powers are limited by her self-confidence, with her full range of powers still a tad ambiguous, although she is considered to be one of the most powerful sorceresses in the DC universe. Now, there was a time when she was practically depowered because of her own self-esteem being at an all-time low during the Seven Soldiers story arc. Her powers are believed to be tied to her self-confidence, with her needing to be in a strong emotional and psychological state in order to fully use them. In addition to that, while Zatanna's powers increase if not used, if she's overused them, it actually drains her significantly, to the point where her physical well-being is put in danger. And at number 6, Dr. Fate. While Zatanna may be limited by her self-confidence, Dr. Fate, on the other hand, is limited by his willpower. Because of the wide range of abilities and immense power that Dr. Fate is capable of, often his biggest restriction is the will of his host, with several different characters having taken up the mantle over the years in the comics. If the body of his host, which acts as a conduit or a focal point of power for Fate, disagrees with Naboo, the source of his power, those can be limiting of what Fate can do. But it's not just willpower that has restricted Dr. Fate in the past. Kent Nelson, the Dr. Fate of New Earth, was very reliant on his Helmet of Fate for his powers. While over time, Nelson was able to develop his own magical abilities, specifically immortality, invulnerability, flight, and telekinesis, the larger range of abilities came from his helmet. These included astral projection, clairvoyance, dimensional travel, divination, eldritch blasts, energy construction creation, healing, invisibility, magnetic manipulation, molecular reconstruction, necromancy, resurrection, telepathy, and divine empowerment. He also doesn't have any emotions when wearing the helmet. In addition to that, after intense conflict or casting extremely powerful spells, his energy and power is temporarily depleted, with him needing to restore his mystical energy. He's also vulnerable to gas attacks, so that's a thing. And at number 5, Deadman. First appearing in DC's Strange Adventures 205 back in 1967, Deadman is a disembodied spirit who is capable of possessing any living being and controlling their actions. But his power is his crux. When not possessing someone, he cannot be seen or heard by anyone, with the exception of a few mystics. He also has a few limitations when it comes to who he can possess. Those with incredibly powerful minds, the likes of Batman, can withstand him. Deadman is only capable of possessing them for a very short time before that person's mind kicks him out. He also can't possess those undergoing post-hypnotic suggestion, since their minds are not truly theirs during an event like that. And at number 4, Krakoa. There are two Krakoas in the Marvel Universe, one of which was spawned from the initial version. Now the first, described as the island that walks like a man, appeared in Giant Size X-Men issue 1 in 1975. It initially started off as a small island in the Pacific Ocean that was affected by radiation from nearby nuclear bombing test sites. The island's ecosystem was turned into a hive mind entity, and of course crossed paths with the X-Men. So how is this character limited by its powers? Well, it is limited to itself, being an island. That being said, it can still do some pretty impressive stuff, using the life forms it's comprised of, acting as a hive mind in which it can create semi-humanoids and animals with varying levels of strength. It also feeds off of mutant energy, which can render some mutants powerless as long as they remain on its island. Now, over the years, it's been dumbed down a little bit, restricted to its intelligence being a survival instinct rather than a psionic power that, at times, actually once rivaled Professor X. Tough luck. And at number 3, Maggot. Maggot is often considered one of Marvel's strangest heroes. Debuting back in 1997 in Uncanny X-Men issue 345, Maggot is a mutant whose digestive system is made up of 2 slugs who can eat through any substance. These semi-sentient slugs exit his body, consume food, then return to Maggot's abdomen and pass nourishment to him, which can give him supercharged powers the likes of strength, stamina, and even increase his physical size, all depending on what they eat. But his powers are restricted to what the slugs, who are named Eeny and Meeny, can consume. Of course they have names. He is entirely reliant on them. And at number 2, Jin Genie. Jin Genie is a character who often finds herself on most offensive or controversial superhero lists online. That's because she's a character whose whole premise is being an alcoholic. Jin Genie, who first appeared in X-Force issue 116, and just like her team leader, she died in that very same issue as well. As a member of the reality TV mutant group X-Force, she died on a mission while rescuing that boy band Boys R Us. But it's not her brief lifespan that's overly controversial. It's the fact that her powers are only generated by drinking alcohol. She can create seismic vibrations proportionate to the amount of alcohol she's consumed. Yeah, so kinda bad. Because she's drunk while using her powers, her seismic waves often would be aimed at her own teammates. I mean, usually accidentally. And finally, in at number 1, Danny the Street. Danny the Street is perhaps the most prohibited hero of them all. He's restricted to being a literal street. That's his whole shtick. Danny the Street first appeared in 1990 in issue 35 of Doom Patrol, created by Grant Morrison and Richard Case. His name is a pun of the Irish-British entertainer Danny LaRue's name, with LaRue being French for the word street. Anywho, Danny is a living sentient piece of urban geography, who can place himself anywhere within an urban landscape, interacting with others by using forms of visual printing that he can generate at will. In other words, he can teleport, and wherever he teleports isn't disturbed by his presence. He's a cross-dresser, something he gets from his namesake, and is often portrayed as having extremely camp mannerisms. So yeah, he's pretty limited despite also being capable of molecular reconstruction, having once become a world. Although in that case he was later reduced to a brick. He would also go on to join Doom Patrol, and even became the location of their headquarters at one point. Funny enough, if you've seen the recent Titans series, the Doom Patrol mansion is actually located on Danny Street. Easter eggs.
Number 10. Thor, aka Donald Blake. So this is a classic weakness and involves his hammer, from the early days of Thor. And it was part of Thor's punishment. So back when Thor first debuted in 1962, he was cast down into the body of Donald Blake, without his memories, but his hammer was cast down too in disguise as a walking stick. And when Blake picks it up and strikes it down, he becomes Thor. It was later retconned that Thor and Daniel Blake were always the same person, which was definitely necessary, because if not, it would have been some Castiel level terrifyingness. Here's the thing, initially if the God of Thunder was separated from his hammer for more than 60 seconds, he turned back into Donald Blake. Also, if we were early enough, he also forgot he was Thor. Those fights must have been really awkward. But for the most part, it was just a weakness to place his foes on a more level playing field against a god. Yeah, the 80s and Simonson's run really revolutionized the character by finding the perfect balance of Earth shenanigans and godly happenings for Thor. In my opinion, the Asgard stuff for Thor is way more interesting. It's better than him just hanging out with us lowly mortals. I do that every day. I want to read about something else. Number 9. Green Lanterns and the color yellow. Going back in time once more to Green Lantern and the Silver Age, we're leaving Alan Scott alone and talking about Hal Jordan and beyond. That is until the whole parallax thing retconned it. Well, it started earlier actually, with the destruction of the central power battery and Kyle becoming Ion, and it was a whole thing. Then it became, oh, it's an imperfection. Long story short, it just felt like they were embarrassed by this weakness and wanted to make it cool. I loved the yellow weakness, so the rings just wouldn't work on anything yellow colored, and that involved Hal's force field. There are some great Hal getting knocked out by yellow objects panels, like people throwing lamps at him, that time from the actually really sad arc where he knocked himself out in a yellow sign and then the story was called The Sign. And then there was the more modern and meme-tastic yet awful All-Star Batman and Robin, where Batman painted an entire room, everything in it, himself and Robin yellow, so that Hal had no recourse. It was glorious. Now new recruits start off not being able to affect yellow, but with training they can overcome. No, give me ridiculous restrictions. They already increased how long it holds a charge. Let me have this. And while you're at it, give me clumsy Hal. I want the Hal who knocked himself unconscious by slipping on a bar of soap while getting out of the shower. That's my Hal. Number 8. Pure Heart. Pure Heart the Powerful comes from Archie Comics, and we talked about him recently in our Powers No One Understands series, which if you haven't checked it out yet, please do so after this. So Archie Comics had, and now as of 2019 once more does have, runs wherein Archie and the gang are superheroes. Archie is Pure Heart, a hero operating off of his pH level, or his pure heart level. So if he has any impure thoughts, even just one, for a blip, power's gone. What makes this restriction odd isn't that component, because plenty of heroes have emotion or thought affected powers. No, it's the question, what exactly is pure? The examples in the comics are things like him accepting a kiss on the cheek from someone who is grateful for being rescued. He didn't ask for it, they gave it. So is accepting gratitude impure? What kind of standards does Archie have to hold himself to? It's too much. Also, he can't get jealous, and we know Archie, that's just not possible for him. Number 7. Winged Victory. Astro City. I'm getting it on more and more lists. I'm playing the long game. I will get my Astro City video. Winged Victory first appeared in Astro City number 2 back in 1995, and she's really interesting. She is a deconstruction of Wonder Woman, and her powers are granted to her by the Council of Nike, which is a group of successful women who have overcome adversity and sought to empower an ordinary woman with the ability to be a hero and create a difference. The only thing is that over time their feminist ideals have become warped to an extreme, to the point where they only want Winged Victory saving women. At crime scenes or disasters, she's supposed to save the woman first, and they threaten her with being depowered when she starts to ask questions about this. They also strongly disapprove of her relationship with the Samaritan, even though he is always respectful and never barges in or assumes she can't do something, and stands back during interviews, not only so the council doesn't get mad at her and think that he's trying to take credit, but also because he has no time. Seriously, it's sad how little time he has. His big dream in life is to have like 1 hour so he can go and fly around by himself. So Winged Victory, she needs to make sure she keeps the council happy, though in more modern issues they have mellowed, kinda. Especially as Winged Victory is a passionate advocate for their cause, championing, and I quote, political, legal, and social emancipation of women. Astro City is interesting, read it. Please. Number 6. North Star and Aurora. They're both members of Alpha Flight, the state-funded Canadian superhero team. Which, to be honest, if we really had a superhero team, it would totally be state-funded. We would really have Alpha Flight. We have an alien landing pad. So when these two first debuted, their powers were tied together. So they had to be together in physical contact, like holding hands, to operate. However, that was quickly modified, so they had to stay in proximity and touch occasionally, like a high five. And nowadays, it's just a boost. If they're in contact, they get an extra boost. Can you imagine having to take your siblings with you crime fighting, even if they had powers, all the time? It would be so irritating, even if you liked them, all the time. Number 5. Rogue. Okay, seriously, think about it. And it's not even the whole she can't touch people thing, because that's not a restriction, that's how her powers work. What the restriction is that she can't use them to their full potential. Rogue first debuted in Avengers Annual number 10 back in 1981, and was initially a villain. In fact, how she gained her super strength and flight was through a confrontation with Ms. Marvel, wherein she held on to her for too long. Because of this, she absorbed her power permanently, and also elements of her personality, and Ms. Marvel was left in a coma for a while, and as for Rogue, it began to drive her insane. And Professor X had to help her untangle her mind. If Rogue holds on too long, she could find herself completely subsumed, which was played with in the recent Infinity War lead-up tie-in wibbly-wobbly timey-wimey stuff, wherein in another universe, Rogue had held on to Captain Marvel for so long their powers and personalities had just fully swapped. So she needs to be careful. We're a timer maybe. Number 4. Captain Britain. Captain Britain first debuted in Captain Britain number 1 back in 1976. Brian Braddock boasts a wide array of powers that were initially mystical. Also, Psylocke is his sister, his twin sister actually, and oh boy, the history there, yikes. So modern Captain Britain has a similar restriction to Pureheart, only his is self-esteem. His power level is dependent on how he feels about himself, and I quote, "The limits of Captain Britain's powers are now tied into his emotions. So if he's feeling feeling very determined and confident, then he's very powerful. But if he's losing it, then he'll really be losing it. He's as strong as he used to be, and he can fly, and that's all due to his magical nature, not to his costume. So I guess we can all just boo him from the sidelines, and that's that. Number 3. Longshot. Longshot first appeared in Longshot #1 back in 1985. He's another Marvel character with luck powers. There's a lot of those running around. Unlike most, Longshot's is centered around good luck for himself rather than bad luck for other people. I mean, Domino's kind of work that way, but hers are more that she's psionically subconsciously affecting her environment and upping her skills. So the thing with Longshot's good luck is that it's impacted by the positive aspects of his personality, and it's also tied a bit to his actions, because I guess some writers had a hard time with the just personality bit. Because it is a little vague, like sometimes if he does bad things it will affect his luck, but that's not a personality trait, but I digress. So no bad days for Longshot. It's not allowed, because if so, he's going down in a fight hard. What will happen is his powers will either shut down entirely or they'll backfire and cause him bad luck. Here's the thing, for someone who's used to having good luck all the time, suddenly having no luck must feel like bad luck. You get me. Number 2. You Go Girl. She first appeared in X-Force number 116, but most will know her from the Ecstatic series, as they spun off from their appearance in X-Force where they were meant to be a media-friendly version of the team, only for the real X-Force to return the next issue with the heading The Real X-Force. You Go Girl is Edie Sawyer, and her power was teleportation, the good kind too, the long distance let's just go and we're not going to end up in the middle of a wall kind. The only problem is it left her exhausted, to the point where she needs to take stimulants to function. Had to. She died. Not from that though, it was from something else. An alien killed her. She actually had to take these stimulants while using her powers. So if she didn't have them, you're not going anywhere. Or well, you're not going far. Number 1. Larfleeze. Yes, Larfleeze, and yes, he counts. Larfleeze is the Orange Lantern. Yes, that's singular. There's only one. He first debuted in Green Lantern Volume 4, number 25 back in 2007, and played a decent sized portion in the Blackest Night event, and has since made the leap over to the New 52 and Rebirth. Larfleeze has all the powers of lanterns, the constructs, etc. However, orange in the emotional spectrum is the color for avarice, so he hoards all the rings and just clutches his power battery rather than having a lantern chant. You know, their charge up pep talk. I'm gonna do it without looking at the camera. In brightest day, in blackest night, no evil shall escape my sight. Let those who worship evil's might beware my power. Green Lantern's light. I'm a nerd. His creed instead is just mine. Larfleeze would undoubtedly be more heroic if his natural inclinations towards greed weren't being increased by the power battery. His very source of power is his restriction. Sad. A tragedy. Number 10. Alan Scott and Wood. We're going back to the Golden Age for this one, and back to the first Green Lantern. Green Lantern first debuted in All-American Comics number 16 back in July of 1940. He got his powers from a mystic meteor, which is found by him, Alan Scott, a young railroad engineer. It tells him to fashion a ring, which he does, cause you do what glowing rocks and things on fire tell you to. He uses his powers to take on crime. It is then that he learns that his weakness is wood. He can create a force field, but wood and clubs, he's down for the count. Also, this used to extend to plant-based objects, but it had to quickly get specific, cause well, that's a lot of things. Why was his ring vulnerable against wood? Reasons. Initially for tension, otherwise I mean who could beat a man with a magic ring and the confidence to wear a costume made of that many colors. Later the idea was introduced in an Elseworld story, Superman and Batman Generations 2, that the weakness was a mental block. To which I say, sure Jan, just like the yellow weakness. Now this was the Golden Age, so of course it needs to be regarded differently, but you know what didn't happen in the Golden Age? Our number 9. Number 9. Power Girl and Unprocessed Materials. Power Girl has an intriguing history. She first appeared in All-Star Comics number 58 back in 1976, and is Superman's cousin Kara Zor-El from an alternate universe. She was initially from Earth 2, the realm that was said to house the Golden Age wartime heroes. This had been created to explain the differences between the Golden Age and the Silver Age. However, over time she has been phased into the main verse, or well, she was. Since Rebirth, she's kind of been trapped. DC has long had a problem with deciding just how to portray her, which has resulted in some fluctuations in powers and weaknesses. At first she was all Kryptonian, but post-Crisis on Infinite Earths where she survived an event that was meant to clean up the timelines and all confusion, which actually caused more confusion, and resulted in incidents such as 1997's Supergirl Volume 4 number 16, wherein she proclaimed sticks and stones can really break my bones. Why? Because they didn't know what to do. They were trying to make her different in a way aside from her rather bountiful chest, which boob window for life. It was an odd period and quickly forgotten. Number 8. Captain Marvel Jr. So the Shazam family, as they are now called, they started out as the Marvel family, but you know, legalities. So Captain Marvel Jr. debuted in Whiz Comics number 25 back in 1941. He was a companion character to Captain Marvel and meant to be relatable to readers, so he remained a teenager initially, and his regular form was a teenager too. He at first didn't say Shazam to transform, and instead he said Captain Marvel, which resulted in the dilemma that he couldn't say his own superhero name, which doesn't sound like too big a deal until an occurrence that would arise a decent amount. People would ask him what his name was. You know, our hero, who can we say has saved us? And he'd have to be, oh, you know, Captain. All of this was changed when DC took over Fawcett Comics' assets. And for some reason, the New 52 was blonde. Number 7. Geoforce. Geoforce these days is best known as, oh, Tara's brother. But there was a time when he stood on his own as well. He first debuted in The Brave and the Bold number 200 back in 1983, but he had been mentioned beforehand. Geoforce is Brian Markov, and he is the Prince of Moldavia, enhanced by Dr. Jace to stop an insurrection by Baron Bedlam. After all of this, he joined the Outsiders. His powers, as one can glean, are Earth-based. He can manipulate the Earth's gravitational field. He can make objects heavier or lighter, and can project lava blasts. Sometimes he can utilize his powers a bit like Tara, but that weakens his durability. However, his true weakness, his restriction, to be at max power, he needs to be touching the ground. And the further he gets away from the Earth, the weaker he gets, and his health will start to be affected too. So no space missions for Brian. Otherwise, do you know what happens? Number 6 happens. Number 6, Adam Strange. Earth Withdrawal. Adam Strange first debuted in Showcase number 17 back in 1958. He's a classic. He was created because DC Comics wanted a science fiction hero. Adam Strange is an archaeologist who suddenly finds himself teleported from Peru to Rann, the planet Rann, through a Zeta beam. The beam was sent out by Sardath in hopes that it would bring intelligent life to their world to help in their war. Drawn into a conflict he doesn't fully understand, Strange falls in love with the beautiful alien Alana and comes to care for Rann more than his original homeworld. Here's the thing though, he physically can't stay on Rann for as long as he wants for a variety of reasons, or couldn't rather. Initially he would sometimes just randomly be teleported back to Earth, most often in times of narrative inconvenience for maximum drama. Cliché, but it worked. Also, the environment of Rann, well, it's not conducive for human health. If he remains on Rann for more than 1 year without returning to Earth, at some point, he'll die. Makes his marriage a little complicated, but not too much. With modern DC tech, it's just a hop, a jump, and a teleport away. Still, the kind of thing you might forget. Maybe. I wouldn't forget it. Number 5. Angel Dust and Adrenaline. Angel Dust is a more recent addition to the list, debuting in Morlocks number 1 in 2002. She's a mutant with the power to elevate her adrenaline levels. When in this mode, she can lift a max of 25 tons, but she can only do this for a short amount of time, or she'll exhaust and hurt herself. It's like a regular person who activates their adrenaline, but only with a higher limit. Have you seen the things a protective mom will do? I've turned into the Hulk more than once. I think Angel Dust may just be a regular person. That's a joke, and probably not a good one. Number 4. Rose Wilson. Rose Wilson is the daughter of the infamous DC villain Deathstroke, aka Slade Wilson, who is also the inspiration for Deadpool, Wade Wilson. She was injected with the same serum as her father to enhance her as he was enhanced by the Hive. She has increased reflexes, stamina, and strength, but she was prone to bouts of psychotic rage, like gouging her own eye out so she looked like her father. She could also increase her abilities through adrenaline. However, this would leave her metabolism unbalanced, and it would ultimately weaken her and cause her to get sick. So it was a trade-off. Since the New 52, you can forget all that. Classic knowledge you'll never need. Number 3. Havoc and 17 Hours. So Havoc is Cyclops' brother and a really prominent member of the X-Men in the comic verse. So Havoc absorbs ambient cosmic energy and then discharges it in plasma form, or as a blast. Here's the thing, his body is always collecting this energy, and once he reaches capacity, it immediately starts emitting it. His chest will show how much energy is left, and if he depletes it all, well, he'll be useful again in 17 hours. 17 whole hours, so plan around that, villains. I mean, on the one hand, it's excellent that he knows this, but on the other hand, it's quite the hindrance and can be exploited. Hence, a weird restriction. Number 2. Wolverine and the Muramasa Blade. For this, we're going to be talking about the second Muramasa Blade. And yes, my enunciation may be off in a language that I do not speak. This blade was forged utilizing a little piece of Wolverine's soul, and it's ridiculous. This sword is sliced through one of Cyclops' optic beams and can reduce healing factors. However, according to Wolverine, it's the one thing on Earth that can truly kill him. I don't know, good trade-off? But if I was essentially immortal, it would be comforting to know that there was something out there to end eternity. Seriously, think about the existential terror of eternal life. It's scary. And number 1. I've been chomping at the bit to talk about this one since the video started. Cookies. Martian Manhunter and cookies. I mentioned Martian Manhunter's love of cookies on the scary alien superheroes list we did, and now I get to elaborate. John Jones loves Chocos, which are 100% not Oreos because those are trademarked. These chocolate cream-filled cookies are completely different. This all happened during John's time on the Justice League International. At first it all seemed cool, they were his favorite snack, okay. But then Booster Gold and Blue Beetle pranked him, buying up the whole town's supply of Chocos and then stole the ones he already had. And while John went into withdrawal and turned into a literal monster, his intellect even lowered and he became very Hulk-like. The team had to lead him to the cookie stash, and he ate them till he returned to normal. Batman then discovered that a chemical in the cookies acted like a narcotic in Martians, leading to the great line, "You're a junkie, a Chocos junkie." Now some say this never happened as John was narrating it, but to them I say, how dare you. Also, the JLI are fun books, read them.
Starting us off in at number 10, Batman. He doesn't kill. Batman is one of the only mortal superheroes without any actual superpowers that can seriously kick butt with the best of them. You could argue that his true power is his plot armor, the fact that he always has a solution, he's always prepared, even against those who are 10 times stronger than he could ever be. But really, his genius level intellect and his obsession with preparing for the worst case scenario always managed to allow Bruce Wayne to keep his head above water, and to take on the likes of powerful characters such as Superman on numerous occasions. But because he adheres to a strict code of honor, one in which he refuses to kill, he often finds himself chasing after villains again and again and again, with him locking them up in Arkham only for them to inevitably break out and cause more havoc on Gotham City or beyond. And sure, maybe that's more of an issue with Arkham's capabilities at detaining inmates, but ultimately if Batman were to just kill the Joker, for instance, a huge chunk of his problems would be solved. Obviously that's putting it lightly, and murder has many implications both in the physical world and psychologically, but this self-imposed restriction could still be argued as one of the Dark Knight's greatest weaknesses. Moving on to number 9, Captain Atom and the strong nuclear force. The New 52 tweaked a lot of things in DC's continuity, including details about characters' abilities. Captain Atom was one of those characters. He is a hero whose abilities derive from his atoms constantly splitting and reforming, which can give him an infinite amount of power, theoretically speaking. And he's proven to raise his power levels almost effortlessly in the past. But his powers do have one major hang-up. His atoms can lose coherence if too much power is used within a short time span. His abilities are linked to something called the strong nuclear force, which is an energy that binds the protons to a nucleus. In contrast to this, it is believed that one day Captain Atom will overcome this limitation, but there's a good chance he won't try to, for the fear that he'll lose his humanity if he becomes that powerful. And at 8, Zatanna and her confidence. Lack of confidence is something that a whole lot of superheroes and even villains have struggled with in the past in the comics. Arguably, it's one of the more common power restrictors out there. Zatanna, the magical DC hero, falls into that category, with her powers being limited by her self-confidence, preventing her from reaching her full potential. There was even a time where, after a series of mistakes on her part, she was rendered powerless, unable to cast spells or manipulate magic whatsoever. Self-confidence goes a long way, friends. Moving on to number 7, Green Lantern and the color yellow. Green Lantern rings have no effect on anything that is the color yellow. At least this was the case. This was thanks to an inherent impurity in the rings. Fortunately for all the Green Lanterns, this was later retconned out of the comics, so that the impurity was later defined as Parallax, the fear entity who was trapped in the Lantern Corps central power battery. Now despite it being retconned, there has been a whole lot of heroes who have made fun of Hal Jordan over the years because of this. Barry Allen once taunted him with a big yellow umbrella, which he used as a shield to protect himself from Green Lantern, which is before the powers were retconned. And funny enough, this was also something we saw Frank Miller's Batman and All-Star Batman and Robin do, and take advantage of, in a very particularly cruel and hilarious way. What did they do? Batman orchestrated an entire room to be painted yellow, along with Robin and himself, just to mess with Green Lantern. He also taunts him while drinking a glass of lemonade, which is kinda like the cherry on top. Moving on to number 6, Aquaman and dehydration. Arthur Curry's whole shtick is that he is an aquatic superhero. The King of Atlantis might get ripped on a whole lot, but unfortunately for him, sometimes those jokes are within good reason. We're specifically talking about a little trait of his that existed for years before it was retconned out of existence in 1959's Adventure Comics issue 256. While the hero could instantly dehydrate anyone to death, if he himself dehydrated, he would be depowered until he got himself near water again. This made for quite a few comical stories in the Silver Age. Moving on to number 5, Wonder Woman and getting tied up by a man. Hey, you know what would be a great idea for a power restriction? Something that completely contradicts what that hero stands for. Enter Wonder Woman's absolutely absurd power restriction from the Golden Age, being depowered if tied up by a man. Yes, we aren't even joking on this one, friends. Wonder Woman was created in 1941 by William Moulton Marston, a dude who was really into bondage. That pastime of his translated into Diana's stories, to the extent that she was rendered powerless if her hands were bound by a man. Now, according to an early depiction of Wonder Woman in a scenario like this, I quote, "My strength is gone. It is Aphrodite's law. When an Amazon girl permits a man to chain her bracelets of submission together, she becomes weak as other women in a man-ruled world." Damn. Needless to say, that is a restriction that eventually faded into obscurity, although that did not occur until the 1980s, so I don't know what's worse, the fact that it existed or that it existed for so long. Up next, number 4, something even more ridiculous, Power Girl and raw materials. Power Girl was introduced in 1978 as Superman's cousin, but with a twist. She came from an alternate universe, Earth 2, and became stranded in the main universe. Because she was from a different universe, she lacked the weaknesses Superman had, aka kryptonite. But writers still had to give her some sort of weakness. So what did they do? This insane crap. A weakness to raw, unprocessed natural materials. If you find that baffling, fret not, so do a lot of other people. Essentially, she becomes vulnerable to things like wood, dirt, water, you name it. She's faster than a speeding bullet, more powerful than a locomotive, and can leap tall buildings in a single bound, but toss a rock at her and girl goes down. Hard. In at number 3, The Flash and excessive speed. In Crisis on Infinite Earths issue 8 from 1985, Barry Allen died, sacrificing himself during the fight against Anti-Monitor to save the multiverse, which became one of the most impactful deaths in DC history. He would disappear for 23 years before fully returning in Jeff Johns' The Flash Rebirth in 2009. His death was caused by him running so fast that he created a speed vortex to draw in the power of Anti-Monitor's antimatter cannon, essentially atomizing his body in the process. It was later revealed that he was stranded in the Speed Force. So in other words, if Barry runs too fast, he can find himself trapped in a realm which is incredibly difficult to escape from, which is kind of ironic because his whole thing is to run fast. Moving on to number 2, Shazam and his name. Shazam's history is filled with restrictions, ones that have largely been retconned since his initial days as Captain Marvel back when the character was owned by Fawcett Comics in the Golden Age. Shazam is a character who, for a very long time, was plagued by the restriction of the word Shazam, which eventually became his name. Saying the magic word Shazam would transform him into his superhero self, going from a boy to a grown powerful dude, man, endowed with a crap ton of magical abilities. These days, since the New 52, Billy Batson no longer suffers from a forced transformation whenever he says the word Shazam, with the name even being used to cast spells. But also fun fact, back in the 90s, Shazam actually shared his powers with his Shazam family teammates, also known as the Marvel family back in earlier times. And his powers were depicted as a finite resource, which, depending on how many family members had transformed their superhero selves, would be divided between them, meaning their powers could be split in half or in thirds or in quarters, weakening all of them to an extent. And finally, at number 1, Captain Marvel Jr. and his name, but worse. If you thought Shazam was bad, his young pal Captain Marvel Jr. got it 10 times worse than he did. He can't say the name Captain Marvel Jr., which, as you can imagine, makes it hella awkward when needing to introduce oneself to other superheroes, let alone the public. So whenever he's Freddie Freeman, he has to actively avoid saying Captain Marvel Jr. or else he transforms into a buff superhero. And some writers have even tried to work around this by having Freddie call himself CM3, which sounds really lame. So you can imagine that that didn't really catch on. And if that weren't enough, he works in a newsroom, which generally tends to throw around a whole lot of superhero names on a frequent basis. So we'd imagine that would definitely not be fun for poor Freddie.
Number 10. Brainiac. One of Superman's greatest villains, brilliant, advanced with supreme technology, able to shrink any city, occasionally hinted at as being the destroyer of Superman's homeworld, Krypton, but he can never leave his ship. In his own comic series titled Brainiac, Superman knocks Brainiac out of his ship during a fight and defeats him simply by exposing him to bacteria, which apparently his immune system is not built to handle. In fact, it is made clear that Brainiac is only safe when on his Skull ship. So yes, in this storyline, Brainiac is still super powerful as long as he can stay on his ship. Number 9. Serpent. Also known as Kull Borson, brother to Odin and uncle to Thor. This is a supervillain who actually killed Thor in the Fear Itself series. He is strong, has magic, can heal, and is able to gain power from fear. That is to say, those who fear him feed his power. However, this works both ways. In other words, if his opponent does not fear him, or if he feels fear, it weakens him to the point that he appears frail, aged, and becomes weak. All I can think of is the fear demon from Buffy when I see Serpent. Not sure if you remember the episode with Gaknar, but now all I can imagine is like a tiny, weak serpent who could easily be squashed when no one believes in him. Fortunately for Serpent, people often fear him, and so he is only in his weak state very rarely, which is good for him because he looks pretty useless when he is not feeling that fear. Number 8. Venom. So Venom, aka Eddie Brock, has a lot of interesting weaknesses. Fire, loud noises bother them, the symbiote can't survive without a host, but let's talk a little bit more around the restriction of needing a host. This is explained in the comics by Venom's constant need to feed on phenylethylamine. What does this mean? That Eddie Brock is forced to constantly snack on chocolate to keep himself bonded to the symbiote. That's right. Chocolate. Okay, so phenylethylamine is actually found in the brain, hence why Venom originally threatened and attempted to eat brains and actually drains this chemical from his host, meaning that in order to keep the symbiote happy and fed, Eddie needs to build up his stores, and phenylethylamine is also found in chocolate. While this has not been mentioned for a while in the comics, the newest Venom film starring Tom Hardy still made a nod at this backstory. Number 7. Reverse Flash. Also known as Eobard Thwain, Reverse Flash is known as one of the fastest characters in the DC universe. He is a constant rival to the Flash and has been a known supervillain in the comics since the 1960s. As terrifying a villain as he is, however, Thawne has his own strange limitations. If you are familiar with the villain, you can probably guess where these come from. Yep, time travel. In the Flashpoint storyline, it is made clear that because his history is connected to Barry Allen's, he cannot actually kill his nemesis. After all, it was Allen's suit that he found in the future, so without Allen, Thawne would not be Reverse Flash. Instead, Reverse Flash just tries to make Barry's life miserable. Number 6. Thanos. As OP as Thanos may have appeared in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, he definitely has had his setbacks in the comics. Namely, that he is a fool for love. More specifically, a fool for loving Mistress Death, or Lady Death, or just plain old Death, as she is known in the comics. I also love that Death is a woman in Marvel. On more than one occasion, Thanos has sacrificed power for Death, and he would probably be ruling over the entire Marvel multiverse right now if not for his obsessive love for her. Not only has he made sacrifices, but he has also been tortured by his lover, even literally driven mad by her. Although it seems like Thanos may be over this love affair as of the end of Thanos Volume 2, and so a lifelong love affair just ends like that. Number 5. Mr. Mxyzptlk. Okay, so first I want to apologize for potentially butchering Mr. Mixie's name. Mr. Mxyzptlk. Mr. Mxyzptlk. It's a tongue twister, for sure. Beyond that confusion, we have the astounding confusion that is Mr. Mixie's powers. That is to say, he is practically omnipotent and has the potential to be one of the strongest DC villains. Practically and potential being explained within his own odd limitations. Mr. Mixie likes to set rules for himself. A trickster in his own right, often if others can trick him into doing certain things, like spelling his name backwards, he will have to retreat or surrender. Odd. And yet, I gotta give it to him, he's probably one of the most fun characters despite this. Number 4. The Void. The Void has a pretty weird one, because he is not just the Void. If you're a fan of the Sentry comics, you would know that the Void is also the Sentry. They are two sides of Robert Reynolds, the greatest hero that the world forgot. And they forgot him for a good reason. His alter ego is the Void, a crazy powerful supervillain who no hero could possibly stop, save for himself. Because the Void is actually contained within Robert, who is also the Sentry. In other words, the Void's limitations are that he is confined to Robert Reynolds' broken mind and is confined to a body that also contains his greatest weakness, because the Sentry is in there too. Moral of the story, mental illness can definitely make you feel like you are being held back. This comic book series is like an artistic representation of that. Number 3. Red Lanterns. The antithesis to Green Lanterns, the Red Lanterns were created through the use of blood magic and are granted powers through channeling rage. Red Lanterns Lanterns are usually quite violent as a result of this. One's rage becomes unleashed, free, and unhinged when joining the Red Lanterns, turning its members into, more animalistic versions of themselves. The more rage one feels, the less intelligent they become, sacrificing intelligence for raw, feral power. In fact, Red Lanterns prefer to attack people with their own hands rather than using their rings, which is somewhat odd. I mean, they may as well use that ring because they can never take it off. Yeah, that's right. What limits a Red Lantern? Their own power source. When you accept a Red Lantern ring and put one on, your blood spoils from within and leaves you barfing up acid. Yeah, I don't know. So you actually can't take your ring off or you would die, as you have no blood. In other words, you can join the Red Lanterns, but you can never leave. Number 2. Galactus. Galactus's power meter is off the charts. Too bad he can never really use it though, because this sometime supervillain has other priorities. He's hungry! In fact, if it wasn't for his hunger, would we even call him a supervillain? Probably not. Galactus is just a being with too much power, and to feed this power, he's gotta keep eating worlds, which keeps him from really doing much else with his power. And his powers are pretty much limitless. Thanos has said before that Galactus is on the god level of powers. He's basically undefeatable. He's also telepathic, can create life, and transmute matter. In fact, his hunger problem has now been fixed, and he actually works more as a creator of planets and life, known as the Lifebringer. Before this problem was solved, however, he destroyed many worlds as a result of his hunger. You know what they say, with great power comes great appetite. Number 1. Mephisto. Basically, Mephisto is the devil of the Marvel Universe. He comes from a hellish dimension and gets people to submit to him, helping him complete dastardly plots in exchange for powers or favors. Often, he does not uphold his part of the bargain by finding loopholes within his pacts or contracts. However, he also has his own limitations. One thing that restricts him from being fully unstoppable is his powers are tied to his dimension, so he often has to find others to do his bidding, as he can't be away from his dimension for too long, and he can't even get just anyone. He has to find someone who is willing to submit, hence his tricksy pacts he makes with people. If he could just go wherever and do whatever, the Marvel Universe would certainly be a more hellish place.
Number 10. Frogman. He first debuted in Marvel Team-Up number 121 back in 1982, and is low on this list because his restrictions are tech-based and easily fixable. So Frogman is Eugene Paul Patillo. His father had been the villain Leapfrog. One day, Eugene found his father's old villain costume in the closet and decided that he was going to reclaim the costume and help his father get over his demons about his bad frog-themed life choices by becoming a hero, Frogman. Upon his earlier outings, all of Eugene's success was accidental, like capturing Speed Demon, an accident. And his father is actually super disappointed in him, but he still helps him. So what is Frogman's restriction, aside from general incompetence? Well, the costume itself is wonky. The springs in it mean that he can't hop in a straight line, which admittedly is disorienting for his adversaries, but also for him. So Frogman is meant to be more comedic, which I need to say, because otherwise you all just assume I don't know that. I know. It doesn't mean they can't have restrictions or still be fun and awesome. Like who you like. And if Frogman is your hero, enjoy with pride. Number 9. Ambush Bug. Ambush Bug has been both a hero and a villain, and to most who encounter him, annoying. He first debuted in DC Comics Presents number 52 back in 1982. So his powers include teleportation, which used to be activated via his suit and then it was incorporated into his actual being. However, in the early days, so we're talking people noticed it in DC Comics Presents number 81, he used to have to activate his powers by saying, "Simon says." But why? Why Simon Says? Simon says, teleport. Ambush Bug was aware of his status as a comic book character and breaks the fourth wall like there's no tomorrow. But it's hard to accomplish this without the character becoming irritating, a feat that Deadpool has managed to avoid for most, but not all. Some have no time for Deadpool. Simon says he doesn't have to do that anymore, which is good because it's not his biggest selling point. Number 8. Vibe. Now thanks to the CW's Flash series, many people are now aware of Vibe, who up until that point had become a little bit of a forgotten character, or rather a bit of a buried one. He first appeared in Justice League of America Annual number 2 back in 1984, and had quite the impressive power set. He could generate shockwaves strong enough to shatter concrete or steel. However, at first, he had to activate his powers by breakdancing, because he was super hip and cool with the kids. He was into their lingo and interests. Please read comics, kids of the 80s and 90s. Look, he's breakdancing. Now, he's still a good breakdancer, but since 2013, his powers were revamped and are more in line with what you see on the CW, interdimensional physics, etc. So yeah, his restriction is long gone, but it's still fun to remember. You know who remembered and had a fun episode about it? Teen Titans Go, which people are sleeping on because they're still bitter about the 2003 Teen Titans series cancellation. Missing out. It's not as silly as people say. And also, silly doesn't have to be bad. Just look at all that love for Animal Vegetable Mineral Man. Number 7. Shatterstar. Shatterstar comes to us from the planet Mojo World and debuted in the New Mutants number 99 back in 1991, so he's extreme. Check out some of his original art by Rob Liefeld. The non-existent eyes, the tiny feet. My childhood. When it comes to abilities, Shatterstar is stacked. Superhuman strength and intellect, so fast he can dodge speeding bullets, but I mean so can Spider-Man after learning Kung Fu. No, I'm never going to let that go. But there are some of his abilities he uses minimally, just because they are a lot for him to maintain. One is his control of electrical frequencies, because it leaves him tired. And when you have so many powers to choose from, why not just pick another? Another one, and this is one he developed later, is teleportation of people and objects across vast distances. But he's got the take your life into your own hands, maybe we're going to be split into 2 teleportation. The transporter from Star Trek fear, but we're not going to get 2 Rikers. No, if he gets distracted, you're being split. Part of you is going to be where you were going, and the other half is going to be where you started. I'm just taking a ship. I'm not taking the risk. Or I'm finding someone with more credible teleportation powers. Number 6. Dollman. Now we recently talked about Dollman in our list of dumb DC superpowers, which was a fun one. Again, you can love someone with lame powers, it's okay. So Dollman first debuted in Feature Comics number 27 back in 1939. It was a creation of Quality Comics, who also featured the likes of Plastic Man and Firebrand, and those are the ones most people would know. Their assets were acquired by DC after the company folded in 1956. They couldn't survive the decline in interest in comic books, especially with a roster of lesser known characters, and hence were absorbed. Dollman, the first Dollman, is Daryl Dane, the Earth's mightiest might, a man who can shrink down to the size of a doll, so 6 inches. The thing is, that's the only height he can shrink to, there's no in between, just full size or doll size. The comics weren't great at portraying this because artists would vary his size, so he'd be standing next to objects and proportionally it would be wrong. But this was an error, not a secret hidden power. He was also only as strong as a man his size would be, so in short, not very. Pun fully intended. My favorite thing about Dollman is his covers. They're all meant to make him look impressive, but they're really funny. Like him tied up under a tap, or him trying to pry apart a regular sized pair of scissors. Number 5. The Wonder Twins. Form of having to be trapped with your sibling to activate your powers. These twins, Zan and Jaina, were created for the all-new Super Friends Hour and debuted in the episode Joyride. They were modeled off of Donnie and Marie Osmond, teen sensations at the time. Huzzah. Their powers could only be activated via fist bump or high five and saying the words form of or powers activate. And then Jaina could turn into any animal, even if it was mythological or imaginary, but she had to say the right one or she'd turn into something else. And Zane could turn into water of any form, which has since been expanded to liquid, which people lectured me about last time, saying that it could be useful. But come on, you have to try and get really dark, like he turns into vapor and floods a villain's lungs, or he could also turn to liquid nitrogen. He could turn to water and then freeze and cover them. But this was the all-new Super Friends Hour, that wasn't gonna happen. Now I'm just imagining an evil Zan. Anyway, their restriction is having to get together to activate their powers. So keep them separate and you're good, sorta. They do have a telepathic link, though they kinda play it off like twins, or they used to. Now it's full telepathy. Form of, Zan is scarier than people think, and if we keep making fun of him, maybe one day he'll snap. Number 4. Steel. Firstly, never forget that there was a terrible 90s superhero film about Steel starring Shaquille O'Neal. Watch it and enjoy the cheese. Now, the character of Dr. John Henry Irons first debuted in The Adventures of Superman number 500 back in 1993, and played a prominent role in the Reign of the Superman arc, which followed the death of Superman, aka Kelly's least favorite comic book arc of all time. He even tried to help Superman during his fatal fight with Doomsday, as Superman had saved his life prior. Now, the death of Superman arc was largely conceived of for 2 reasons. 1, to boost dwindling Superman sales, and 2, as padding in the lead up to the writer's true intended arc, the wedding of Lois and Clark, which they had to postpone so it would line up with the wedding of the then airing Adventures of Lois and Clark. Cross promotion. An engineer, Irons built his own armor and filled in for Superman. Also, fun fact, out of all the stand-ins, he was Lois's favorite. He proved so popular he would get his own solo series, Steel. So why is he here? He's here because one of the armors he wore, the Entropy Aegis, gave him godlike strength and let him grow in size, but there was one problem. It turned him into a violent, angry man and was eating away at his soul, and in comics that's literal, not metaphorical. So yeah, couldn't use it. Restriction. Had to go back to less evil armor. Just for bad joke's sake, he's literally the Man of Steel. Better Man of Steel Stealing Snyder's. Heyo! I'm sorry, there are parts of that movie that are good, but it just makes it so easy. Just low-hanging fruit. Number 3. Cypher. Cypher first debuted in New Mutants number 13 back in 1984, and is another one with really cool abilities, and they're intuitive and have to do with comprehension and translation and problem solving. Deciphering codes, computer languages, assessing structural integrity. It makes him a great strategist and problem solver to have on a team. However, because everything happens subconsciously, he can't explain to you how he got to the conclusion he got to. Now some of you are going, why? What's the big deal with that? Well, it's all good if he's doing everything. But what if he has to explain what he's doing to someone else so they can do it? He can't, because he doesn't know. So yeah, could be a problem. Usually isn't, but here at Top 10 Nerd we're preparing for all eventualities. Number 2. Rainbow Girl. Another one from our dumb powers list. The universes are colliding. We're heading for infinite crisis. She debuted in Adventure Comics number 309 back in 1963 and can tap into the emotion spectrum, which has now been determined to be the same one as the Green Lanterns. The thing with her powers is that she's not fully sure how they work, and they cause her intense mood swings, so she can't tap into the emotion she wants. She can't do it on command. Well, sometimes she can, but in the early days that was definitely not the case. Created as a bit of a joke for the League of Substitute Heroes, aka the backup legion to the League, the B Squad, the D Squad, the Z Squad, some feel she needs a massive overhaul and that her base conception was sexist. I definitely think you could weaponize empathy, but then you'd be a supervillain, just using feelings to manipulate and hurt. She could be very powerful. Maybe she already is. Number 1. Penance, aka Speedball. He debuted in the Amazing Spider-Man Annual number 22. He's Robbie Baldwin. He can create a kinetic force field and absorb the kinetic energy around him to reflect it back at an even greater force. That was when he was Speedball, a name that had to be changed because, well, drug references. Now he's Penance, and his powers have changed slightly. For a while he thought that they were gone, but he was wrong. What it was is that he could only use them if he felt pain, hence his new name. The new suit he wears is constantly digging into his skin, and he has developed a pretty high pain tolerance, but this is the only way he can operate. There are 612 spikes facing inwards in the suit, to represent the number of people who lost their lives in a tragic event he was part of. 60 of the spikes are longer to represent the kids that died. So yeah, he's not okay. His powers now no longer require this, but they are boosted by it. Still, for a time, this was quite the restriction. Number 10. The Ten-Eyed Man. This character debuted in Batman number 226 back in 1970. In his first origin, Philip Reardon was injured in Nam when fragments of a grenade hit his eye. He returned to Gotham and got a job as a security guard, and one night while trying to stop a robbery, he mistakes Batman for one of the thieves and is injured, losing all his sight. But fear not, a brilliant doctor, Dr. Engstrom, reattaches his optic nerves to his 10 fingers, so he can see from his 10 fingers. His fingers are now eyes. He has 360 periscopic vision, but well, they're eyes, so they're super sensitive. Get dirt on them, cover them with a blanket, he grabs anything too hard with them, touching things is now a problem. Yeah, he's a great marksman now, but you have to do all these convoluted hand movements. Go ahead, insert jokes about mine. But you really have to contort to get things to work. He just has to be really careful. Is it a blessing or a curse? He really should have done the scientific talk show circuit. He would have made money and avoided Batman and made him feel bad for ruining another person's life. The best revenge is living well. Number 9. Calendar Man. He's low because, well, he didn't have powers at first. He first debuted in Detective Comics number 259 back in 1958, and over time has transitioned from a gimmicky villain to one who, while still gimmicky, is more credible, and has taken part in some well-received stories. On top of really needing to plan his heists and other plans around holiday events, he also now ages with the seasons and is reborn each spring. So if he is in his winter phase, yeah, you can take him. Unless he planned ahead, which he's good at. A great planner, Calendar Man. Still, having to plan according to hyper-aging would be a nuisance. You can't control everything, and if something important happens when you're down for the count, you're just gonna miss out. SOL. Number 8. Humpty Dumpty. He first debuted in Arkham Asylum Living Hell number 2 back in 2003, and actually isn't malicious, but that is part of what makes him have a restriction. He was actually keen on repairing things, but he breaks anything he reassembles, mostly because the things he's reassembling aren't broken, and this has actually led to many deaths. What he is good at, though, is fixing things for his fellow Arkham inmates, which also fuels their psychoses, so he's helping in all the wrong ways. If only he understood what he was trying to do, he could use his desire to repair for good, and maybe open a watch repair shop, or a clock shop, or something modern that people actually need repaired, a computer repair shop. Being able to disassemble and reassemble is a good skill, but you have to be able to do it correctly. Number 7. Snowflame. So he's a supervillain who debuted in New Guardians number 2 back in 1988, and he gets his powers from cocaine. Yup, you heard that right. He fought against a group of heroes in Colombia because topical, also stereotypical. typical. He has a power called the cocaine touch. He is so infused with cocaine, touch him and get high. Here's the thing, he's also an addict. So the thing that grants him his powers is killing him slowly. So often that is the way. He also gains superhuman speed and strength and pain tolerance while on cocaine. But he's also pyrokinetic, but I like to think he was that way before. He died quite quickly in the same issue he appeared in fact, in a big explosion. And if he hadn't, yeah, he wouldn't have been around for long. Somebody somewhere would have made a case for this glorifying drug use or being offensive to the people of Colombia. As it stands, Snowflame is a blip, mocked fondly by those who remember him. Aren't you glad you now know about Snowflame? Number 6. The Infidel. My plan to get more and more Astro City into these videos is slowly coming to fruition. We're in the endgame now. So the Infidel is the arch nemesis of the Samaritan, and their existences are intertwined. The Infidel was an African slave who became an immortal sorcerer, and used his powers to eventually seize control and rule a wasteland future in the 36th century, ruling over a world that would eventually end. He was so powerful he would often take these little zen trips out of the timeline to be alone and ponder. During one of these meanderings, he lost everything. The Samaritan, who was just an average person from the dystopian 35th century, was selected to stop the world from ending. And his time travel trip back in time, he was imbued with powers, and he succeeded, hence erasing the Infidel's version of paradise, his future. But not him, since he was outside the time stream. When he realized what happened, he tried to create a world without the Samaritan. However, they are completely evenly matched. Neither can win. They have fought each other to the destruction of reality multiple times, but they can just never win. So now the Infidel lives outside of the main timeline, and him and the Samaritan have dinner once a year to see where the other's head is at, and if he's getting more good or if the Samaritan is getting more evil, because that's the only way anything is gonna happen. His restriction? He's terrible at changing the Samaritan's mind, like serving him dinner prepared by his slave girl harem. At least pretend to be good, play the game a little. I like that they're just chill frenemies now. It's very Venture Bros feeling, like, cool, okay, we tried, come on over, I made tacos. Speaking of the Venture Bros, in at number 5, Phantom Limb. So the Venture Bros is a series that parodies many things, but largely the superhero genre and action genres of the Silver Age, things like Johnny Quest. There are many villains in the series that I adore, but my favorite is Phantom Limb, Dr. Hamilton G. Phantomos, former boyfriend of Dr. Mrs. the Monarch, and full-time melodramatic villain. He is the most competent villain in the series and the most pretentious. But his power set, let's get to it. Initially, he had small deformed limbs and was hence an outcast from his family. An experiment to fix them did render them normal sized, but also invisible and able to kill with a touch. He always has to hide them now and wears gloves, though he's most often in his Phantom-inspired purple costume. It's hard to keep your rep up as a normal person while you have to hide that your limbs are invisible. Thankfully, for the most part, he doesn't care, and he's now a member of the Council of 13. He's chilled out a lot. I miss his romance with that shoe though. Yeah, that's right, an actual shoe. Phantom Limb's great. I'll be his girlfriend. After Lex. Yeah, I'm weird. I don't apologize for it. Number 4. The Enchantress. Marvels, so just Enchantress. She has quite the power set, but used to have a very Wonder Woman-y weakness. She first appeared in Journey into Mystery number 103 back in 1964. And no, her weakness isn't that she's in love with Thor, or that she initially got her powers from Loki. For a little bit, it's complicated. On top of the usual Asgardian perks of strength, speed, and stamina, etc., she also has the ability to manipulate ambient magical energy, which she can then project or shoot. She can also perform complex spells, cast illusions, levitate, disrupt time, use mind control. She also of course performs enchantments, some on herself, such as to increase her beauty to make her literally bewitching so that people are enchanted. Also, she has cast a spell on her lips so that any man she kisses is her slave for a week. They don't use that much anymore. However, way back in the day, she had a restriction. She couldn't access her powers if her hands were bound and she was gagged. So you get to have your standard bondage panels. This isn't a thing so much anymore, but I bet some people miss it. Number 3. Black Adam. He first debuted in Fawcett Comics back in 1945, because he was under the Marvel family umbrella, and would be absorbed by DC with all the rest of the Fawcett characters after Fawcett Comics went bankrupt after years of litigation with DC over Superman plagiarism and copyright issues. Black Adam is one of the main antagonists for Captain Marvel, now known as Shazam. He is Teth Adam, an Egyptian granted powers by the wizard Shazam. However, he abuses them and is banished. This is the classic origin, people. He stays in his magical form all the time, which for a time gave him the restriction that he could never change back, that his physical form had aged, and if he changed, he would turn to dust, which has happened and been depicted, and it's horrifying. But there have been subsequent changes in how people view that logic that has allowed him to change back. The question is he actually aging while he is powered? For some, the answer is no, and they think his mortal body is in a sort of stasis. He later gained the power of Isis that has actually rendered him more powerful than Billy, but again, wibbly wobbly timey wimey. So many retcons and rebirth. Keeping up with comics can be a lot. There's a lot. So much to explore, so be sure to check it out for yourself. Number 2. Trigon. He debuted in the New Teen Titans number 2 back in 1981. Trigon is the father of Raven, and initially could not come conquer the Earth except for through Raven, who is constantly battling against him and his influences. Nowadays, this is less of a thing, but Raven being a conduit was a huge part of her first run on the New Teen Titans, and continues to be every time they adapt these stories. Trigon is so powerful that he really could destroy the Earth on a whim, so he needs this restriction. We need him to have this restriction. Do you think we'll ever get to see a full-blown monstrous Trigon on Titans? One of my favorite Trigons is Nice Guy Dad Trigon from Teen Titans Go. He's a fun sweat lord. He first debuted in Justice League number 1 back in 1987, and yes, he has powers. He did more than kill Ted Kord and get his neck snapped by Wonder Woman. She twisted it all the way around, front to back. But it's Rebirth, so he's fine now. Lord started out normal, but gained powers after the Dominators invaded Earth, telepathic ones that allowed him to influence others' minds by making subconscious suggestions to them. However, if he uses them, he 11s all over the place. It's all anime boy seeing a hot girl for the first time. Translation, his nosebleeds. So it hurts him, but right before his death at the hands of Wonder Woman, he had gotten so good at controlling his powers, he could even control Superman. See? Practice makes perfect. In Rebirth, he has always been a meta-human and can push people to follow their subconscious desires. However, now the drawback is he can't control what those desires are, so he's not as much of a threat. Always liked Maxwell Lord as a character. That has nothing to do with anything, just fond. What character that doesn't get a lot of airtime do you like? Yes, I know he was on Supergirl, but it wasn't the same.
In at number 10, Raven. Raven is a very powerful member of the Teen Titans crew, and her background of being half demon means that she has a number of different supernatural abilities ranging from spellcasting to telekinesis. In the Teen Titans animated show, the majority of her abilities are focused on her manipulation of darkness, but for the comic books, she's able to manipulate so much more. Raven possesses a power to change the emotions of others, which comes in handy when wanting to calm down a few supervillain rampages. However, her powers become significantly restricted in terms of controlling her own emotions. In at number 9, Beast Boy. Another key member of the Teen Titans team who has appeared in a variety of iterations is Beast Boy, aka Garfield Logan. After coming into contact with a rare disease, his parents attempted to save him by using an untested machine, which turned his skin green, but not all things are bad. It did grant him with some remarkable abilities. He's able to transform into any animal and sometimes anything he chooses. One time, a lamp. Not the best, but nonetheless, let's continue. While he maintains his human intelligence when transforming into an animal, his powers become restricted due to his inability to communicate once in that form. Plus, whenever Gar is sick, he has a very tough time trying to control his abilities. Even a simple cough or sneeze could randomly transform him into something that he didn't want to transform into. In at number 8, Jessie Quick. As a speedster from the Flash family, Jessie is connected to the Speed Force, making her a Speed Force conduit. This allows her a number of remarkable powers such as accelerated healing to having enhanced senses, allowing her to react faster in times of trouble. Although all of these enhanced abilities do have their limitations. While having an incredible level of stamina, Jessie's hypermetabolism is her one drawback. Due to her Speed Force, Jessie must consume large amounts of nutrients in order to restore her strength after maxing out all of her speed abilities. Taking breaks for snacks may not be a huge power restriction, but it is one nonetheless. In at number 7, Dick Grayson. One of the more important and prominent members of the Teen Titans is Dick Grayson. Not only is he one of the most respected figures in the superhero community with his ties to Batman, but Grayson has also proven on more than one occasion that he's perfectly capable of standing on his own. Due to Grayson not being blessed with supernatural powers, many of his greatest strengths come by way of human-related skills that he's just been able to master. Things such as acrobatics learned from his time with the Flying Graysons and hand-to-hand combat mastered through his partnership with Batman are all human abilities that can be taught and enhanced through practice. This means that for a majority of his powers, we'll call them that, the restrictions would come by way of his own emotions. When he is under immense pressure, he has a bad habit of lashing out, which means his leadership and other powers are not under his direct control. In at number 6, Hawk. Also known as Hank Hall, he is one half of the crime-fighting duo known as Hawk and Dove, which have been main members for both the Teen Titans as well as the Titans. Of the pair, Hawk Hawk is by far the muscle of the duo with his enhanced strength, endurance, and agility. Due to his height and density, Hank is, for the most part, invulnerable to a lot of damage. However, Hawk has a few major power restrictions that do limit his extraordinary abilities. For starters, his own powers will not allow him to change back into his human form until any and all injuries he has sustained are fully healed. Another drawback is that when Dove is not by his side, Hawk finds himself spiraling into rage-fueled battles and becomes very prone to reaching an uncontrollably berserk state. In at number 5, Ravager. AKA Rose Wilson, she is the daughter of Slade Wilson, also known as Deathstroke. Due to her being the daughter of such a dangerous person, Rose too was given the same serum as her father, thus enhancing her abilities to that of near superhuman levels. As Ravager, she was trained by Nightwing to learn how to not just hold her own in a fight, but control these powers as well. One very valuable power that Rose possesses is precognition, which allows her to predict an opponent's move before they've even had a chance to deliver it. In a fight, that's an invaluable asset to have, although this power of precognition does have its limitations. Rose can only access this ability when her adrenaline is triggered. In at number 4, Speedy. Speedy was once the alias that Roy Harper took on while working as Green Arrow's sidekick, but upon joining the Titans he eventually became known as Arsenal. In any case, no matter what his name is, Roy displays that he is one fine marksman, in fact one of the best in the world. On top of that, he's an expert in martial arts and can turn any object into a weapon. The name Speedy came by way of his ability to fire off arrows faster than even Green Arrow himself. His status as just Speedy the sidekick though may be one of his greatest power restrictions. If you're thought of less than your superhero partner, then realizing your own greatness becomes trapped inside the idea that you're not good enough or not as good as your superhero. For Roy, this was a big factor along with the addiction problems with alcohol and heroin that stem from him being human. I mean, what are you gonna do? In at number 3, Malcolm Duncan. Also known by his Teen Titans alias of Harold, Malcolm was once a powerless citizen made into an honorary member of the team when he saved them from a gang. At the time of joining the Teen Titans, Malcolm had no formal training or any real powers other than what he could accomplish in a boxing ring. However, now seeking to take full advantage of this opportunity, Malcolm utilized the enhanced exoskeleton of Guardian to improve his strength, speed, and overall durability. Getting to his weaknesses, although it has since been retconned, one of the main power restrictions for him was a curse from the Angel of Death, who granted Mal with a mystical horn that would kill him if he ever lost a fight. Seeing as though this weakness has been removed from his now alias of Vox, it's safe to say that again more power restrictions from Malcolm would come from his kind of human side. Malcolm suffers from post-traumatic stress disorder, which means that anything triggering the events that led to this mental health disorder could be considered a restriction to his powers. In at number 2, Dove. Although there have been 2 people that have donned the Dove outfit, for this point because we're focusing on Teen Titans, we'll be talking about Don Hall, the brother of Hank Hall that we mentioned earlier. As we said earlier, Hawk and Dove have this sort of symbiotic relationship, where together they are much stronger. This is also what creates the restrictions for their own powers though. Dove is there to calm Hawk down so that he can focus during battle, but that doesn't necessarily mean that Dove is equipped for battle himself. Sure, he can soar through the air, sense impending danger, and is well equipped for hand-to-hand combat, but it doesn't go further than that. Without Hawk by his side, Dove is like a sitting duck. Last but not least in our number 1 spot, Jericho. Deathstroke was a busy man creating another Teen Titan with power restrictions for our list. Joseph Wilson is the youngest son of Slade Wilson, which is where he gained the metahuman gene that led to his powers. For those of you who don't know, Jericho was rendered mute when his father failed to save him from an assassination. Jericho then went on to be saved by his mother, where she trained him in combat and stealth tactics. His metahuman abilities though allow for Jericho to possess people, which, as you can imagine, would be a great power for battle. Although, this is where the restrictions follow. If the person he is wishing to take over is awake, he must make direct eye contact to take them over, and even so, he still remains a mute. Ugh.